Dr. Lisa Morgan stepped out of her research truck and breathed in the crisp morning air of Yellowstone National Park. The sun was just beginning to rise over the mountains, painting the sky in soft colors of pink and orange. She had been studying wolves in this area for over 5 years, and she knew every pack, every territory, and almost every individual wolf by sight. Something was wrong. Jake Miller, the park ranger who had been working with her, walked up carrying his binoculars and a confused expression on his face. "Lisa, I've been tracking the blacktail pack for 3 days now. Their radio signals just stopped. All of them. At the same time." Lisa frowned and checked her own tracking equipment. The blacktail pack consisted of 8 wolves, including the alpha pair and their cubs. Each wolf wore a small radio collar that sent out a steady signal so researchers could follow their movements. The signals had been strong and clear for months. "When did they stop?" she asked. "Tuesday night around 11:30. I thought maybe it was equipment failure, but I checked all the other packs too. 3 more packs have gone silent in the last week." Lisa felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. In all her years of research, she had never seen anything like this. Wolves didn't just disappear. They were too smart, too careful, and too connected to their territory. They drove deeper into the park following the last known location of the blacktail pack. The area looked normal. The grass was undisturbed. There were no signs of struggle, no blood, no tracks leading away. It was as if the wolves had simply vanished into thin air. "Look at this," Jake said, pointing to a small clearing. "This is where they denned. See the worn paths, the scat, the markings on the trees? This pack lived here for 2 years. They wouldn't just leave." Lisa knelt down and examined the ground carefully. There were paw prints from the wolves, but they seemed to stop suddenly, in the middle of the clearing. No exit tracks, no disturbance in the surrounding vegetation, just nothing. Over the next few days, more reports came in. The grizzly bear known as Bear 211, a massive male that researchers had been following for 8 years, had disappeared from his territory near Yellowstone Lake. His radio collar was found on the ground, perfectly intact, but with no bear attached to it. A family of mountain lions that denned in the northern part of the park had vanished. Eagles, hawks, and even smaller predators like foxes were missing. Each disappearance followed the same pattern. The animals were there one day, gone the next, with no trace of where they had gone. Lisa called her colleague Dr. Kevin Barnes at NASA's astrobiology department. Kevin had been studying reports of strange phenomena from around the world, and Lisa hoped he might have some answers. "Kevin, I need to ask you something. Have you heard about any unusual animal disappearances lately?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Lisa, I was just about to call you. We've been getting reports from all over the world. Wildlife researchers in Africa say entire prides of lions have disappeared. In the Amazon, jaguars and anacondas are vanishing. In Australia, dingoes and crocodiles. Always the top predators, always without a trace." Lisa felt her stomach drop. "How many locations are we talking about?" "Over 50 confirmed sites across 6 continents. And Lisa, there's something else. Our satellites have been picking up unusual energy readings at the exact times and locations of these disappearances, brief spikes of unknown radiation, lasting only a few seconds." That night, Lisa couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the missing wolves, about the way their tracks just stopped in the middle of the clearing. She had seen predators hunt, seen them killed by larger predators, seen them die of disease and old age. She had never seen them simply cease to exist. Far above the Earth, beyond the reach of human telescopes, a massive ship drifted silently through space. The vessel was over 2 miles long, its hull gleaming with an alien metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Inside the ship, hundreds of viewing chambers and containment units were being prepared for new arrivals. Overlord Vextar stood in the ship's command center, his tall, thin form casting strange shadows under the purple lights of the alien technology. His species, the Zarathi, had been collecting specimens from primitive worlds for over 1,000 years. Earth was their newest hunting ground, and the variety of life forms had impressed even their experienced collectors. "Report on the collection. Progress," Vextar commanded in his native language. his voice a series of clicks and harmonics that would sound like music to human ears. "The harvest proceeds as planned, Overlord," replied his subordinate Kethrin. "We have successfully acquired 847 specimens of various predator species from the target world. The primitive creatures show no awareness of our collection methods." Vextar examined the holographic displays showing Earth's continents. Red dots marked successful collection sites, while blue dots showed areas still to be harvested. "Excellent. These specimens will bring great profit in the galactic entertainment markets. The primitive nature of this world's life forms makes them ideal for our zoo collections." The Zorathi had developed highly advanced bioscanning technology that could identify and target specific genetic markers. Their collection beams could teleport living creatures from the planet's surface directly into their ship's containment systems. To them, Earth's animals were nothing more than exotic pets to be displayed and sold to the highest bidder. "Have the specimens shown any unusual behavior in containment?" Vextar asked. "Nothing significant, Overlord. The creatures appear distressed as expected, but they have made no serious attempts to breach containment. Their intelligence levels are well within normal parameters for primitive species." What the Zorathi didn't understand was that they weren't just collecting animals. They were taking creatures that had survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and millions of years of evolutionary pressure. Every species they captured had earned its place at the top of the food chain through intelligence, adaptation, and an instinct for survival that had been refined over countless generations. Back on Earth, Lisa stood in the empty clearing where the Blacktail pack had lived. The morning sun was rising again, but the forest felt different now, quieter. Even the birds seemed to sense that something was wrong. Jake walked up beside her, his face grim. "I just got off the radio with the other park rangers. We've lost 17 packs of wolves, 12 grizzly bears, 6 mountain lion families, and over 30 birds of prey in the last 2 weeks. This isn't natural," Lisa said quietly. "Predators don't just disappear like this. There has to be an explanation." What neither Lisa nor Jake realized was that high above them, invisible to human eyes, alien collection beams were scanning the forest. The Zorathi were preparing for their next harvest, confident that Earth's primitive creatures would be easy prey for their advanced technology. They had no idea that they were about to learn why Earth's apex predators had survived for millions of years. The creatures they were collecting weren't just animals to be put on display. They were survivors, problem solvers, and masters of adaptation who had faced extinction before and won. The war between Earth's wildlife and their alien captors was about to begin, and the Zorathi were completely unprepared for what was coming. Amy Carter crouched behind a fallen log, her camera ready and her heart pounding. She had been a wildlife photographer for 12 years, but she had never seen anything like what was happening in the forests of Montana. Animals were disappearing, and she was determined to find out why. Her partner, Ben Walsh, lay flat beside her. Ben had served 3 tours in Afghanistan as a military tracker before becoming a wildlife guide. His trained eyes could spot movement that most people would miss, and his instincts had kept them both alive in dangerous situations. "There," Ben whispered, pointing toward a small meadow about 50 yards away. "Family of black bears. Mother and 2 cubs." Amy adjusted her camera lens and focused on the bears. The mother was teaching her cubs how to find grubs under fallen logs. It was exactly the kind of natural behavior that Amy loved to photograph. She began taking pictures, capturing the tender moments between mother and offspring. Then something impossible happened. A soft blue light began to shimmer around the bears. At first, Amy thought it was her eyes playing tricks on her, but Ben grabbed her arm. "Do you see that?" he whispered urgently. The light grew brighter, and Amy could hear a strange humming sound like electricity running through power lines. The bears stopped what they were doing and looked around nervously. The mother bear stood up on her hind legs, sniffing the air and making low warning sounds to her cubs. "Keep taking pictures," Ben said quietly. "Whatever this is, we need to document it." Amy's fingers moved automatically, her camera clicking rapidly as she captured frame after frame. The blue light was getting stronger, and now she could see that it was coming from above, though she couldn't see any source in the clear sky. The bears began to panic. The mother tried to push her cubs toward the trees, but the light seemed to follow them. The humming sound grew louder, and Amy felt a strange tingling sensation on her skin. Then, in the space of 3 seconds, the bears simply vanished. One moment they were there, running toward the forest edge. The next moment, the meadow was empty. No bears, no sound, nothing. Even the blue light was gone. Amy and Ben stared at the empty meadow in shocked silence. Amy looked down at her camera display, scrolling through the photos she had just taken. The images showed the entire sequence: the bears going about their normal activities, the appearance of the blue light, the animals' growing panic, and then empty grass where they had been standing. "This is it," Amy said, her voice shaking. "This is how they're disappearing. Something is taking them." Ben studied the meadow through his binoculars. No tracks leading away, no disturbance in the vegetation. They didn't run off. They were taken straight up. They spent the next hour examining the site. Ben's military training had taught him to look for details that others might miss. He found scorch marks on some of the grass, arranged in a perfect circle about 20 feet across. The marks were faint, barely visible, but they were there. "Whatever did this has technology we don't understand," Ben said. "The precision is incredible. They took 3 moving targets simultaneously without leaving any other trace." Amy uploaded her photos to her laptop and studied them more carefully. In several frames, she could make out strange distortions in the air above the bears, like heat waves but more geometric. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the screen. "There's something there, but it's almost invisible." Meanwhile, 300 miles away, Dr. Lisa Morgan was having a similar revelation. She had teamed up with Dr. Alex Rivera, a cryptozoologist from the University of Colorado who specialized in tracking rare and elusive animals. Alex had developed new techniques for finding creatures that didn't want to be found, and Lisa hoped his methods might work on whatever was taking the wildlife. They were analyzing data from motion-activated cameras placed throughout Yellowstone when Alex made an important discovery. "Lisa, look at these timestamps," he said, pointing to his computer screen. "Every disappearance happens at almost exactly the same time of day in each location." Lisa studied the data. 11:30 p.m. local time. Why that specific time? "I don't know, but there's more. Look at the pattern of which animals are being taken." Alex pulled up a map showing the locations of all known disappearances. "It's not random. They're taking the most successful predators from each ecosystem. The alpha wolves, the dominant bears, the most experienced hunters. Like they're shopping for the best specimens," Lisa said quietly. "Exactly. And there's something else. I've been talking to researchers around the world, and they're all reporting the same thing. The animals that haven't been taken are acting strangely. More alert, more cooperative with other species, almost like they know something is coming." In Nevada, at a SETI listening station, communications specialist Grace Taylor was having the most important night of her career. She had been monitoring radio signals from space for 8 years, always hoping to find evidence of intelligent life beyond Earth. Now she was getting more than she had bargained for. "Danny, come look at this," she called to her colleague, computer expert Danny Clark. Danny rolled his chair over to Grace's workstation. The screens showed complex wave patterns and frequency analyses that looked like abstract art to most people, but to trained eyes they told a story. "I've been tracking these signals for the past week," Grace explained. "They're definitely artificial, definitely from outside Earth's atmosphere, and they're getting stronger." Danny studied the patterns. "Can you decode any of it?" "Some of it. The mathematical portions are fairly straightforward once you establish the base counting system. But Danny, you're not going to believe what they're talking about." Grace pulled up her translation notes. The alien communications were fragmented and difficult to understand, but certain phrases came through clearly. References to primitive, specimens, collection quotas, and entertainment value. "They're talking about Earth like it's a shopping catalog," Grace said. "Listen to this fragment I decoded. Quadruped carnivore specimens show acceptable aggression levels for combat. Exhibitions." Danny felt sick. "Combat exhibitions? They're taking our animals for gladiator fights?" "It gets worse. There are references to zoo installations and breeding programs throughout their territory. They're not just taking a few animals. They're setting up to harvest Earth's wildlife on a massive scale. Grace continued working through the night, decoding more fragments of alien communication. The picture that emerged was terrifying. Earth had been discovered by a species that viewed other worlds as sources of entertainment and profit. They saw Earth's animals as primitive creatures that would make interesting displays for their advanced civilization. But as Grace listened to more communications, she began to notice something the aliens were missing. Their reports described minor equipment malfunctions and unexpected specimen behaviors. The aliens were starting to have problems with their Earth animals, but they didn't seem to understand why. Back in Montana, Amy Carter and Ben Walsh were sharing their photographs and video with scientists around the world. The evidence was clear. Something with advanced technology was systematically kidnapping Earth's top predators. The question is, what do we do about it? Amy asked, as they sat around their campfire that night. Ben poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks up into the dark sky. In the military, we had a saying, "Know your enemy." Right now, we don't know enough about what we're fighting. Fighting? Amy asked. Amy, they took 3 bears right in front of us. They're taking animals from all over the world. This isn't just research or accident. This is invasion. Ben looked up at the stars. And somehow, I don't think they're expecting much resistance from a bunch of primitive Earth animals. High above them, the Zarathi continued their harvest, confident in their superiority. They had collected over 2,000 specimens and were preparing storage facilities for thousands more. To them, Earth's creatures were nothing more than exotic pets. They had no idea that they had just declared war on millions of years of evolutionary success. The alpha female wolf opened her yellow eyes and immediately knew she was not in her territory anymore. The air smelled wrong. It was too clean, too empty of the forest scents she had known her entire life. The ground beneath her was smooth and cold, not the soft earth and fallen leaves of Yellowstone. She stood up slowly, her powerful muscles tense and ready. Around her, the rest of her pack was waking up. Her mate, the alpha male, was already on his feet. His lips pulled back in a silent snarl. Their 4 younger pack members huddled together, whimpering softly. The walls around them were made of some clear material that looked like ice, but felt warm to the touch. Beyond the wall, she could see other enclosures. In one, a massive grizzly, bear-paced back and forth. In another, a mountain lion crouched low, watching everything with green eyes that missed nothing. The alpha female had survived 7 winters in Yellowstone. She had raised 3 litters of pups, led her pack through harsh storms, and defended her territory against rival wolves and human encroachment. She was a survivor, and survivors learned to adapt quickly to new situations. She began to examine their prison more carefully. The walls were solid except for one section that had small holes for air. The floor was smooth but not slippery. Above them, strange lights provided steady illumination without any visible source. Everything was designed to keep them contained. But whoever built this place had made assumptions about wolf behavior that might not be correct. In the enclosure next to theirs, the grizzly bear was having similar thoughts. Bear 347, as the researchers had called him, was a 12-year-old male who weighed over 600 pounds. He had survived encounters with other bears, angry moose, and even a few foolish humans who had gotten too close. His massive paws and claws could tear through most materials, but the walls of his prison seemed impossibly strong. Still, he was a bear, and bears were intelligent problem solvers. He began testing every surface, every corner, every possible weakness in his containment. The bear pressed his full weight against different sections of the walls, scratched at the joints where walls met floor, and even tried to climb the smooth surfaces. Above them both, in a smaller enclosure, a family of ravens was conducting their own investigation. Ravens were among the smartest birds on Earth, capable of using tools, solving complex puzzles, and even planning for future events. The lead raven, a large male with glossy black feathers, was studying the strange devices attached to the walls of their prison. These devices seemed to monitor the animals with small lights that blinked in different patterns. The Raven watched the lights carefully, beginning to understand that different behaviors cause different blinking patterns. When he moved to the left side of the enclosure, certain lights would flash. When he made noise, other lights would respond. The 2. Raven was learning the alien technology by experimenting with it. Back on Earth, Dr. Lisa Morgan was documenting something that had never been seen before in the scientific community. The remaining wildlife was behaving in ways that challenged everything researchers thought they knew about animal behavior. She stood in a meadow near the Montana-Wyoming border with Dr. Carol Stone, a veterinarian who had been studying the psychological effects of the disappearances on surviving animals. What they were witnessing defied explanation. A pack of coyotes was working together with a family of red foxes to hunt rabbits. This should have been impossible. Coyotes typically saw foxes as competitors or even prey, but these animals were coordinating their movements, sharing information, and even sharing the food they caught. "Look at that," Dr. Stone whispered, pointing to a nearby hillside. A black bear was digging in the same area where a family of raccoons was foraging. The bear, which could have easily killed the raccoons, was actually warning them when he found dangerous objects like broken glass or sharp metal. "It's like they know they need to work together," Lisa said. "Like they understand that their survival depends on cooperation." Dr. Carol Stone had been studying animal behavior for 15 years, but she had never seen anything like this. The stress of losing so many of their kind might be causing them to form new social bonds. When a species faces extinction, sometimes unusual survival behaviors emerge. What the scientists didn't know was that the remaining animals could sense something in the air, something that told them they were being watched and evaluated. The creatures that had avoided capture so far were the smartest, the most careful, and the most adaptable. They were beginning to understand that they were in a war for survival. In urban areas, the changes were even more dramatic. Domestic dogs that had never shown hunting instincts were forming packs with stray cats and urban wildlife. In New York City, rats were working with pigeons to avoid the strange energy readings that preceded disappearances. The rats would hide in deep tunnels when the pigeons warned them of unusual activities in the sky. Intelligence analyst Katie Price was tracking these behavioral changes from her office in Washington, D.C. Her job was to look for patterns in data that others might miss, and the pattern she was seeing now was both fascinating and terrifying. "The animals are organizing," she told her supervisor during their morning briefing. "Not just locally, but across species lines and even across continents. We're getting reports from Australia that dingoes are cooperating with wild pigs. In Abo, Africa, the remaining lions are working with leopards and wild dogs. This level of interspecies cooperation has never been documented before." Her supervisor, a practical man who had little patience for theories, frowned at the reports. "Animals don't organize like that, they compete for resources." "Under normal circumstances, yes, but these aren't normal circumstances. The animals that are left are the survivors, the smart ones who figured out how to avoid being taken. And they're sharing that knowledge with other species." Meanwhile, tech specialist Danny Clark was making discoveries of his own. Working with Grace Taylor at the SETI station, he had been analyzing the alien communications for 2 weeks. The messages were becoming easier to decode as he learned the patterns of their language. "Grace, listen to this," Danny said, playing back a translated alien transmission. "Collection efficiency dropping in sectors 7 through 12. Specimens showing increased evasion behaviors. Request guidance on improving capture protocols." Grace looked up from her own work. "They're having trouble catching the animals now? It gets better. Here's another one from yesterday. Containment systems experiencing minor malfunctions. Specimen behavioral patterns differ from initial assessments. Requesting additional security measures for high-intelligence captures." "High intelligence? Captures?" Grace asked. Danny grinned. "I think they're starting to realize that Earth animals are smarter than they expected. And here's the best part." He played another transmission. "Priority alert. Several specimens have demonstrated tool use and cooperative problem-solving beyond anticipated parameters. Recommend increased containment protocols for all future acquisitions." Back on the alien ship, Overlord Vextar was indeed becoming concerned. What had started as a routine collection mission was turning into something much more complicated. The Earth creatures in their containment facilities were not behaving like typical primitive specimens. "Report on containment status," he commanded. His subordinate, Kethron, looked nervous as he delivered the update. "Overlord, we have experienced 17 minor containment breaches in the past 3 cycles. The quadruped pack hunters have been testing their barriers systematically. The large omnivore specimens have been attempting to damage structural elements. Most concerning, the small flying creatures appear to be learning to manipulate our monitoring equipment." Vextar studied the reports with growing unease. In 1,000 years of collecting specimens from primitive worlds, they had never encountered animals that adapted this quickly to captivity. Most creatures either became docile or died from stress. These Earth animals were becoming more dangerous the longer they remained on the ship. "Increase security protocols," he ordered, "and prepare additional restraint systems. These creatures may require more aggressive containment methods." What Vextar didn't understand was that every minor containment breach was actually a carefully planned test. The Earth animals were learning about their prison, gathering information, and slowly but surely preparing for something their captors couldn't imagine. The apex predators of Earth were getting ready to show the Zarathi exactly why they had survived for millions of years. The alpha female wolf had been watching the patterns for 3 days now. Every 6 hours, the lights in their enclosure dimmed for exactly 30 minutes. During this time, the monitoring devices that blinked constantly went dark for brief moments. She had counted the timing carefully, and she knew this was their chance. She communicated with her pack through body language and soft whines that the alien monitoring equipment couldn't interpret. Her mate positioned himself near the corner, where 2 walls met. The younger wolves spread out across the enclosure, ready to act on her signal. In the enclosure below them, the massive grizzly bear had made his own discovery. The smooth walls that seemed so strong had a weakness. Where the feeding mechanism entered their prison, there was a joint that flexed slightly when pressure was applied. The bear had been working on this spot for days, using his claws to gradually weaken the material. The family of ravens had learned something even more important. They had figured out how to mimic the light patterns that controlled their feeding system. By moving in specific ways at specific times, they could trigger the mechanism that delivered food. If they could control the feeding system, they might be able to control other systems as well. High above in a specialized containment unit, a family of dolphins had been conducting their own experiments. Dolphins were among the most intelligent creatures on Earth, with complex language abilities and problem-solving skills that rivaled those of humans. The aliens had been forced to fill their enclosure with water, creating a mini-ocean environment. Lead dolphin, a mature female, had been studying the water circulation system. She discovered that by swimming in specific patterns, she could create pressure changes that affected the flow of water throughout their section of the ship. More importantly, she realized that the water system was connected to other parts of the vessel. In another section of the ship, a family of elephants was putting their legendary memory to use. The matriarch had been mapping every sound, every vibration, every change in their environment. Elephants could remember complex routes across thousands of miles of African savanna. Learning the layout of an alien ship was simply another navigation challenge. The elephants had discovered that certain actions in their enclosure caused responses in other parts of the ship. When they trumpeted at specific frequencies, they could hear answering sounds from other animal enclosures. They were creating a communication network that spanned the entire vessel. On Earth, the resistance was becoming more organized every day. Former Navy SEAL Ryan Hayes had taken leave from his job as a conservation officer to investigate the alien landing sites full-time. His military experience told him that the strange energy signatures left behind by the alien collection beams might contain useful information. Working with tracker Ben Walsh and photographer Amy Carter, Ryan had discovered something remarkable. The aliens weren't just taking animals randomly. They were following a specific pattern, always collecting from the same types of locations at the same times of day. "They're predictable," Ryan explained to the small group of scientists and military personnel who had gathered in a remote cabin in Montana. "Every collection happens at 11:30 p.m. local time. always in areas with specific geographical features. They prefer elevated clearings with good visibility and easy escape routes. Amy pulled up her photographs on a laptop. Look at these images from the bear abduction we witnessed. See how the energy beam comes from directly overhead? They need clear line of sight from their ship to the target area. Ben studied topographical maps of the region. If we know where they're going to strike next, we might be able to interfere with their collection beam somehow. Dr. Lisa Morgan had joined the group, bringing data from wildlife researchers around the world. We've identified at least 12 locations where they're likely to strike in the next week. But there's something else. The remaining animals in these areas are behaving strangely. They're avoiding the collection sites entirely. How do they know? Ryan asked. We think they're learning from each other. The animals that have witnessed abductions are teaching survival behaviors to others. We've documented cases where domestic dogs are leading wild animals away from danger zones. Meanwhile, veterinarian Dr. Carol Stone and animal behaviorist Dr. Mark Phillips were studying the most remarkable development of all. The surviving Earth animals weren't just hiding from the aliens, they were actively hunting the alien technology. Show them the footage from last night, Dr. Stone said to Dr. Phillips. Dr. Phillips pulled up video from a trail camera in Colorado. The footage showed a pack of coyotes surrounding a small metallic device that had been left behind by the aliens. The device was probably some kind of scanner, designed to identify and catalog local wildlife. In the video, the coyotes didn't just avoid the device. They systematically destroyed it. One coyote would distract the device by moving in front of it, while others approached from behind. They used rocks and sticks to damage the equipment, working together with the precision of a military unit. This isn't instinctive behavior, Dr. Phillips explained. This is learned, planned, coordinated warfare. These animals understand that the devices are threats, and they're actively working to eliminate them. Dr. Stone nodded grimly. We've documented similar behavior in 15 different locations. Urban raccoons dismantling monitoring equipment in parks. Wild boars in Europe destroying alien collection beacons. Even house cats are participating, knocking small devices off high surfaces where they shatter on impact. Back on the alien ship, the problems were getting worse. Intelligence analyst Katie Price and tech specialist Danny Clark were monitoring the alien communications, and the messages they were intercepting painted a picture of growing chaos aboard the vessel. Danny played the latest transmission he had decoded. Emergency protocols activated in biocontainment sectors 15 through 23. Multiple specimens have achieved partial containment breach. Security teams report unusual cooperation between different species groups. Katie leaned back in her chair, a satisfied smile on her face. They're starting to panic. Listen to this one from 2 hours ago. She played another recording. Request immediate guidance. Earth specimens demonstrating tactical coordination and problem-solving abilities far exceeding initial assessments. Current containment protocols may be insufficient. And here's my personal favorite, Danny added, playing a third message. Priority alert. Large quadruped specimens have damaged primary structural support in Sector 18. Flying specimens have compromised monitoring systems in Sectors 12, 13, and 14. Aquatic specimens appear to be manipulating ships' water recycling systems. The two analysts looked at each other with growing excitement. The aliens had made a critical error in judgment. They had assumed that Earth's animals were primitive creatures that could be easily contained and controlled. Instead, they had captured some of the most intelligent, adaptable, and resourceful creatures in the galaxy. On the ship, Overlord Vextar was beginning to understand the magnitude of his mistake. The Earth specimens weren't just escaping from their individual enclosures. They were working together across species lines, sharing information, and coordinating their efforts. How many containment breaches in the last cycle? He demanded. 47. Minor breaches, 12 major breaches, and 3 complete containment failures. Keith Rann reported nervously. The specimens appear to be testing our system systematically, probing for weaknesses in coordinated waves. Coordinated? Vextar's voice rose in alarm. These are primitive animals, they don't coordinate. With respect, Overlord, the evidence suggests otherwise. The pack hunters are sharing information with the large solitary predators. The flying creatures are conducting reconnaissance for the ground-based specimens. Even the aquatic animals are participating by disrupting our environmental controls. Vextar studied the ship's status reports with growing dread. In sector after sector, Earth animals were demonstrating capabilities that defied everything the Zorathi thought they knew about primitive species. These weren't just animals. They were survivors who had spent millions of years perfecting the art of adaptation and cooperation. Prepare the emergency containment protocols, Vextar ordered, and send a message to the home fleet. We may need assistance. But even as he gave the order, Vextar suspected it might already be too late. The Earth creatures had been studying their captors for weeks now, learning their weaknesses, planning their moves. The apex predators of Earth were about to teach the Zorathi a lesson in survival that they would never forget. The alpha female wolf knew it was time. She had spent weeks studying every pattern, every weakness, every opportunity aboard the alien ship. The moment had finally arrived when all the Earth animals would act together in one coordinated strike. She let out a low howl, barely audible but carrying a message that every creature on the ship understood. The signal spread from enclosure to enclosure, carried by sounds that the alien monitoring equipment couldn't detect or interpret. In the dolphin's water-filled chamber, the matriarch began swimming in the specific pattern she had perfected. The pressure waves she created traveled through the ship's water system, disrupting flow sensors and causing pumps to malfunction throughout the vessel. Emergency lights began flashing in engineering sections as the aliens struggled to understand why their water recycling systems were failing. The family of elephants added their contribution to the chaos. The matriarch trumpeted at precisely the frequency that interfered with the ship's communication systems. The sound waves, amplified by the ship's metal structure, created interference that blocked alien transmissions between different sections of the vessel. High above them, the ravens put their intelligence to devastating use. They had learned to manipulate the light-based control systems in their enclosure, and now they began rapidly triggering multiple commands simultaneously. Food dispensers activated randomly, environmental controls switched on and off, and monitoring equipment throughout their section began receiving conflicting signals. The massive grizzly bear had been waiting patiently for this moment. He positioned himself at the weak point he had been working on for days, and threw his full 600-pound weight against the damaged wall joint. The material, weakened by weeks of careful scratching and pressure, finally gave way with a loud crack. The bear squeezed through the opening and immediately began freeing other animals. His powerful claws made quick work of the locking mechanisms that the aliens had thought were foolproof. Within minutes, wolves were running free through the ship's corridors, followed by mountain lions, foxes, and dozens of other predators. But the Earth animals didn't just run wild through the ship. They had a plan. The wolves used their pack coordination to systematically disable the ship's internal sensors. They had observed that the aliens relied heavily on their monitoring technology, and without it, the Zorathi were nearly blind to what was happening in their own vessel. The big cats used their stealth and climbing abilities to reach critical systems in the ship's upper levels. Mountain lions and leopards moved through air ducts and maintenance passages, accessing areas that the aliens had never expected anyone to reach. The bears provided raw, destructive power, tearing apart machinery and structural elements that smaller animals couldn't damage, but they didn't destroy randomly. They targeted power conduits, life support systems, and navigation equipment with surgical precision. Meanwhile, on Earth, the remaining wildlife was launching their own coordinated attack. At exactly the same time, the shipboard animals began their escape. Every surviving predator on the planet turned their attention to the alien monitoring devices scattered across the continents. In Yellowstone, a pack of coyotes surrounded an alien beacon that had been transmitting data back to the ship. They had learned that these devices were the aliens' eyes and ears on Earth, and they systematically destroyed every component with rocks, claws, and teamwork. In the Amazon rainforest, jaguars and howler monkeys worked together to locate and eliminate alien sensors hidden in the canopy. The monkeys used their agility to reach devices placed high in the trees, while the jaguars dealt with ground-based equipment. In Africa, the few remaining lions coordinated with hyenas, leopards, and wild dogs to hunt down alien technology across the savannah. Animals that had been natural enemies for millions of years were now fighting side by side against the invaders. Urban areas saw the most remarkable cooperation of all. In cities around the world, domestic animals joined with wild creatures to wage war on alien surveillance equipment. Dogs led rats and pigeons to hidden devices. Cats knocked alien sensors from high buildings. Even urban raccoons used their nimble fingers to dismantle complex alien electronics. Back on the ship, Overlord Vextar was discovering that his worst fears were coming true. The Earth creatures had turned his vessel into a battlefield, and they were winning. "Report," he screamed at his subordinates as alarms blared throughout the command center. "Complete systems failure and biocontainment," Kethran replied, his voice shaking with panic. "The specimens have achieved full breach and are actively sabotaging ship operations. Engineering reports massive damage to power systems, life support, and navigation." "How is this possible?" Vexitar demanded. "These are primitive animals." "Overlord, with respect, they are clearly not primitive. They are demonstrating tactical coordination, technical knowledge, and problem-solving abilities that exceed many spacefaring species we have encountered." The truth was finally sinking in for the Zorathi. They had made the greatest mistake in their 1,000 years of specimen collection. They had assumed that a planet's animals would be easy prey, not realizing that Earth's creatures had survived countless extinction events through intelligence, adaptability, and cooperation. The ship's hull began to groan and shake as critical systems failed one after another. The dolphins had completely disrupted the water recycling systems, causing flooding in lower decks. The elephants had damaged the communication arrays so severely that the ship couldn't call for help. The ravens had overloaded the computer systems with conflicting commands, causing a cascade of malfunctions throughout the vessel, and the freed predators were hunting the aliens themselves. Wolves moved through the corridors in coordinated packs, cutting off escape routes and herding the aliens into areas where they could be trapped. The big cats used their stealth to ambush alien crew members who tried to reach critical systems. Even smaller animals like foxes and badgers contributed by chewing through important cables and destroying equipment the aliens needed to regain control. "Emergency evacuation protocols," Vextar ordered, but it was too late. The Earth animals had disabled the escape pods and damaged the ship's engines beyond repair. The great vessel that had terrorized Earth's wildlife for months was now falling toward the planet's surface, crippled by the very creatures it had tried to capture. As the ship entered Earth's atmosphere, the animals inside didn't panic. They had survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, and countless other disasters. A crash landing was just another challenge to overcome. The wolves found secure areas where their packs could ride out the impact. The bears used their strength to create protective shelters from debris. The big cats found high, stable positions where they could maintain their balance. The intelligent species like elephants, dolphins, and great apes worked together to identify the safest locations on the ship. When the alien vessel finally crashed in a remote area of the Canadian wilderness, it was Earth's animals who walked away from the wreckage, not their captors. The surviving Zorathi found themselves stranded on a planet where every creature, from the smallest mouse to the largest bear, now saw them as enemies to be driven away. The aliens discovered that Earth's animals had not only learned about their technology during captivity, but had also taught that knowledge to their Earthbound relatives. Dr. Lisa Morgan and her team were among the first humans to reach the crash site. What they found amazed them. The escaped animals were already adapting pieces of alien technology for their own use. Ravens were using alien communication devices to coordinate with other bird flocks. Wolves were incorporating alien sensors into their territory patrol systems. Even the bears had figured out how to use alien environmental controls to improve their dens. "They didn't just survive," Amy Carter said as she photographed the scene. "They learned. They adapted. They turned the aliens' own technology against them." Ben Walsh nodded as he watched a pack of wolves demonstrating hunting techniques to a group of coyotes, using alien tracking equipment to locate prey more efficiently. Millions of years of evolution taught them how to survive anything, even alien invasion. The few surviving Zorathi were eventually found and taken into custody by human authorities, but not before every wild animal on 3 continents had gotten a good look at them. The aliens who had once considered Earth's creatures to be primitive specimens now cowered whenever they heard a wolf howl or saw a raven's shadow. Earth's apex predators had not only won their freedom, they had gained new knowledge and technology that would help them thrive for millions of years to come. The Zorathi had learned too late that evolution's greatest survivors don't make good prisoners. They make very dangerous enemies.